DorkLair.
Welcome to another DorkLair action figure review. Today I'm taking a look at the MAFEX Batman from the Hush story. They seem to be really kind of dedicated to that Hush story because not only do they have this Batman, they have a variant all black and gray, and then they have Catwoman and Hush himself, Superman, and I would be really shocked if they don't do a Joker to mix in there as well with that Hush story. So yeah, I mean, they're kind of like full throttle on Hush, and I'm glad because this figure is pretty awesome. I do like MAFEX figures. I have found them to be somewhat brittle. I don't know if I'm just kind of ham-handed or what, but I tend to find them a little bit brittle. So far, this one's been pretty good. I do really love the sculpt. I mean, this thing looks like it jumped right out of the comic book. The cape's pretty cool. I got a few gripes with it, but overall, it's got a great effect and awesome posability. So just pretty typical MAFEX stuff here, right up there with their other great figures, like that Boba Fett is, a real highlight to me. So yeah, I'm liking this figure quite a bit, even more so than some of the other MAFEX figures. So anyway, it's been a long enough wait for this figure to come out, so let's get into this review. So Batman comes in the typical MAFEX box. It's kind of blocky and bulky and not terribly high quality in terms of the materials, but it looks nice, and it's going to present well on a shelf if you're like shopping in a store and happen to see one there. So pretty typical MAFEX stuff here. I like that the background has some comic book art in there, and take a look at the bottom and then a look at the top. So pretty standard MAFEX packaging. Okay, starting off with the sculpt, paint, and details, a look at this first head sculpt here. It's pretty good. Like, the eyes are painted really well. I think there's a little bit of shading going on in there. In the brow and some of the folds and creases and stuff. The outline of the cowl where his face is showing through on mine seems fairly crisp. On this side, there's definitely some overpaint. You can see it right there on the cowl. On this side, I don't really see much, maybe a tiny bit there. His mouth definitely has like a little bit of sloppiness, like it's not quite even, and I don't know if it's coming through in the video, but all of these things are like almost not really noticeable unless you're really zooming in and looking at it. So not terrible. The eyes are very nice. I don't really see anything wrong with the eyes on mine unless I'm just not catching it with the naked eye. Maybe I'll see it later, with the high def video. But quick look at the back. You can see the cowl has a plastic part sort of around keeping the cape on there. It gives it a little bit of a slightly weird look there, but I think it's mostly because the way the neck is separate from the cowl. On a lot of Batman figures, you're going to see the neck and the cowl be sort of one piece. I don't love the way that the cape has a lot of material just coming straight out of the cowl in the front here. It's really bunchy, and it's hard to get him into a good kind of a neutral pose. Got to really mess around with it to kind of get all those folds sort of flat. But I think my gripe there is almost a non-issue because this figure is meant to be posed in a crazy pose, and I kind of like the Spider-Man. Like, the Spider-Man doesn't look terribly great in a neutral pose, but it's just all about posing and action and getting that cape flowing out there and all that stuff. So otherwise, the cape is cool. It's got stitching and then wires throughout. So this part right here on the outer edge, and then there's two within. So there's one wire here, and then another wire, where is it? There's another wire over here, and then one there. So if we kind of fan out the whole cape, you can get a sense of where the four wires are there. Pretty big cape too, super dramatic, and the Jim Lee art, it's pretty much gonna try to recreate a lot of that stuff. I do love how the symbol came out on the chest. It is not just painted on, it's sculpted on. Mine's pretty sharp. I don't really see too much wrong with it. Maybe just inside the cracks, just a tiny bit, it might be slightly uneven, but overall, the sculpt work is incredible. And then I feel like that makes, the sharp paint pop as well. So pretty nicely painted symbol on his chest there. And then there's some shading throughout, some very nice shading on the muscles. Just really brings out the sculpt work. Beautiful figure. Quick look at the belt over here. A little shading in there too. You know, it's nothing terribly complex. It's just executed well with a beautiful sculpt. Again, the boots are sculpted. There's like a line sculpted there, so it gives a nice sharp, crisp edge. And yeah, I really love the look of this figure. Here are his MAFEX counterparts, Spider-Man and Boba Fett. Here he is next to a couple Mezco figures. You have the Sovereign Knight Batman, and you have the Golden Dragon Gomez, but I got the Diabolique head on there. A couple Hasbro figures. On the left is the Marvel Legends Captain America, and on the right is the G.I. Joe Classified Cobra Trooper. Again, shout out to Datalink's Magnus YouTube channel. Hooked me up with this figure. Go follow, subscribe, like, watch his video. It's got a great review of that figure. A couple Mythic Legions. On the left is my own creation. That is pretty much a Calavius with a Deluxe Knight mashed up. He's called the War Dork. And on the right is a standard Elf Legion builder. And then finally, a couple figures, the slightly bigger, slightly smaller. On the left is Conan the Barbarian from Super 7. On the right is an articulated Icons Ninja that I sort of kit bashed into Storm Shadow. And getting into the accessories, he comes with 3 different heads. This is the second head sculpt, the sort of action snarling head sculpt, which looks kind of ridiculous when he's in a neutral pose, but actually this is my preferred head, and I'm probably gonna have him on this in a crazy awesome pose on the shelf. So yeah, that head's pretty sweet right there. And then one thing to note about this neck and head, so these are the 2 mast heads and then the neck that goes with them. Mine's really tight. Like, it can be kind of a pain to get off, first of all, and then this peg is super tight as well. And that makes me nervous because I've had some fragility issues with MAFEX, and that peg worries me a little bit because it's so stiff. It's really hard to move around. But when we get into the articulation, you'll kind of see that it has a curve, so you can curve that around the front, ideally, or curve it around the back, depending on if you want them looking up or down. The problem is it's really hard to move that thing around. So that's one little gripe right there. And then he's got this really chiseled Bruce Wayne head that looks, again, straight out of the comic book. And yeah, that's painted well. Beautiful looking Bruce Wayne head right there for a few different posing options. I did have a friend in a group whose cowl piece unglued and came off right out of the box. So if you have this figure, be careful. Again, MAFEX tend to have some fragility issues. It's one of the bigger gripes that a lot of people have with these figures. Okay, working our way through the rest of the accessories, in addition to the fists that are already on him, he has these action hands. He has a pair of relaxed hands. He has a pair of Batarang sort of holding hands. They're just like all sculpted in there. And then he's got a pair of sort of like almost closed fists that have some little space in there that you can stick the Batarangs in. And then these kind of like semi-open hands as well. Now he does come with the grapple gun, but it's like sculpted in. I actually think it's glued on, but it's glued onto this other hand. So it's this separate piece, and he's got one for each side. I do know that Chris from the podcast, he was trying to pull it off, I think, with this, and the piece came unglued. It just popped right off, so be very careful with that. And then along with the grappling gun, there are 2 different grappling hook pieces. This one's a long metal wire, and that can peg right in there. Or you can use the short metal wire and have that one peg in as if he's about to fire it. So that's a pretty cool look right there. I mentioned the Batarang hands, and then he's got these 2 Batarangs that can go in and out of these hands, and then 2 in this other style. And like all MAFEX figures, he does come with the flight stand as well. So that's always a handy thing to have. Extra flight stands is great, especially for a Batman figure. Last but not least, let's get into the articulation. So like I said, the head is a little tight, but he can look up pretty well. And if you really mess around with that peg in there and turn it and sort of ratchet it around, you can get even better looks. But he can look down pretty well and up pretty well. And you could sort of half peg the neck on there, and you could mess around with it and really get him into some crazy poses with that head. It can tilt side to side. I do like the shape of that peg in there. I just know that mine is super tight and it makes me nervous. And again, I'm trying to be very delicate because all the wires in there, I'm worried that they're going to lift this up like I saw with the other guy that had that. But he's got butterfly joints in the shoulders, so his shoulders can kind of lift up and down. They can come across his chest. quite a bit. They can be springy. I've noticed that like MAFEX figures can sometimes have like springy joints sometimes. But yeah, so he can come across his chest like that. He can butterfly out to the side. He can swing his arm back really far, and then, you know, all the way up. So just MAFEX articulation, just tons of great movement. You can see the arm can shimmy up and down. So many great options for posing. There is a swivel at the bicep. You have a double jointed elbow here. There's no elbow twist, but you do have that bicep twist, and then there's also no twist at the gauntlet either. But the hands have lots of great motion on that ball and hinge. Okay, so the upper torso has a ball joint, and he can arch back quite a bit. You will see some gap there, so your position might matter, but you can mess around with it. I think it's a double ball up at the top there of the torso. He can go side to side, a little bit side to side at that top joint. You have to kind of work it around a circle almost, like this. And then he can crunch forward at the top about that far, so back and forth. At the waist, he can twist, he can crunch. And when you add that waist to that upper torso, he can crunch forward quite a bit. And then he can arch back quite a bit as well. So great motion, just a fun figure to mess around with and to pose and to articulate. And then the hips do have that drop down. They come down a little bit there so that you can kick them forward, and then you can kick them back. And there you can see that gap where they drop down a little bit, or you can tuck them back up. He can come way out into the splits, about that far. He can bend his knees all the way up with the double joint there. You can twist at the top there. There's a ball joint at the top that you can twist. There's no twist at the boot, no twist at the knee, but down at the feet will twist. They will point down. They will point up quite a bit. Just a lot of range of motion in those feet. And then for wide stances, they can, they can pivot very well. And then he's also got a toe joint. I don't think I showed you the bottom of the boots. I think they have Wayne Industries on there, like a W, when I was showing the details. Anyway, that's pretty much it for my review. I think this is a fantastic release. They're expensive. I do still kind of think that MAFEX figures feel slightly overpriced, but now that there's like some soft goods in there with the cape, I do think that it adds a little bit of value and it makes it feel kind of more like an $80 figure than some others. And in fact, like getting your hands on them, it's a little bit more than 80. It's usually like 88, maybe 90 or so when you import them. But these days it's really tough because shipping is a mess. So, you can find this on Amazon Japan for 88 still. I think it's like 72 on like Hobby Link, and then shipping's like another $20, $25 because the only options are like the really fast FedEx or DHL. So I recommend it. I say don't skip this figure. Get your hands on this thing. The price doesn't matter to me on a figure like this. It's awesome. Highly recommended. Until next time, may the force be with you.
Follow me into the